of minutes to approve. First are from July 24. Anyway, we need to review the minutes and approve them. Any amendments from the minutes were sent out? Hearing none.
I have some couple of comments on.
Yes.
On the July 24th minutes.
Yes.
Okay. I think we should add that John and Linda Rath, Southwest Bedford Street, was at that meeting regarding the tree removal and testified and was interviewed regarding the tree removal permit.
We actually had two different meetings. One was about the tree and the other was about, Max, you can explain. That we had two different sessions on the 24th. One was the tree removal.
One was the tree removal meeting, and then the other one was a workshop
Yeah.
regarding adding a tree, like an approved tree list to our official.
So the first minutes are about the workshop.
Okay.
So not the trees.
Okay. Then the minutes regarding the workshop, I suggest that we add that Commissioner Mitchell suggested that the city have an approved tree list for all of King City, including the Kingston Terrace Master Plan, so that there is one list that applies throughout the city.
Okay? Hearing, thank you very much. With that, is there a motion to approve the minutes? Is there a second? Second. All those in favor?
Or in favor? I'm in favor.
Any opposed? We need to go ahead. Yeah. All right.
Opposed, abstention, one.
Okay. The second set of minutes deal with the tree code that you were mentioning. And
I will suggest that we add that John and Linda Rath, RACZ, testified and was interviewed regarding their tree removal permit request.
that the Razes were in attendance and testified.
Yes.
Is there any, are any issues with those minutes?
I don't believe they actually testified.
They did not testify. You guys had conversations, which is not testifying.
They got up and said, "We're the people."
And just remember, I do not do permission.
No. Okay. All right, but they were in
Yeah, I can add that.
yeah. Okay. With that amendment, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
With the exception.
With the addition? Yeah. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Right.
And then 0.
Okay. All right. The next item, number 4, is to consider the West Side Trail Concept Plan. Staff doing your report first?
Fisher. So, as you can see, we have laid out this 30-foot rollout map in front of you. What you see as far as the amenities on this map are the culmination of months of public outreach efforts, as well as the coordination with the current landowners and the current operations that exist on that corridor. So it has been a process talking with various agencies that currently own and operate that land, including BPA, the Bonneville Power Administration, PGE, Kinder Morgan, and that's just getting access to actually put stuff on the land itself. As you can understand or imagine, there's limitations to what you can really put underneath power lines. So we had to kind of work around the parameters that they were given. With that being said, this concept is about 15% design. It still needs engineering. It still needs land use agreements to be put forth. And it's still in some negotiation phases as far as acquisition and rights to the easements, and things like that, so we can actually be able to put the stuff and get funding for the park itself. But as I mentioned, what you see there is a culmination of public outreach. So in April, we held a public open house at Deer Creek Elementary. We had about 50-plus people come and give feedback. Kimmy Floop is here from Consor. She can kind of go over some of our public outreach efforts. She had reports and kind of came to the conclusion of all the surveys that we did. But more or less, we asked people what they would like to see in the park and where they would like those things to go. For a little bit of background, the West Side Trail is part of the Metro Regional Trail System, which had their master plan passed back in 2014. This is segment one. So segment one is one of, I think, about 20-something odd segments that span from the Tualatin River to Forest Park. They're done segments because of the various jurisdictions. It goes through King City, it goes through Tigard, unincorporated Washington County, Beaverton, and parts of Portland. It also is under the umbrella of Tualatin Hills Parks and Recreation Department. So there's a lot of different players involved. We are only responsible for our one segment, which is just as wide north to south as the city. So we're restricted by the East End and the Tualatin River, which gives us just about 1/8 of a mile to work with on our section of the corridor. What we've been looking at for this is, it is segment one, so it does have a bit of value in the greater scheme of the regional trail system because it's the beginning of the West Side Trail, and ultimately down the road there's going to be there's plans for a bridge, a pedestrian multimodal bike ped bridge over the Tualatin that's going to connect to Tualatin, the city of Tualatin's Tonkin Ice Age Trail, which also goes all the way down to Wilsonville. And Wilsonville's been hard at work. They've actually completed all their sections of the trail, so they're that trail's coming up north, and the West Side Trail's kind of coming down south, and King City serves sort of as the linchpin right between these two regional trails. And obviously, we can't put the cart before the horse, so before there's a bridge, before we can think about really being a part of this general network, we need to get a path first, street connections as part of the infrastructure with TSP, and then the amenities will come as we get funding for those. So part of the funding efforts that I've been a part of are searching for grants that are available through our regional partners and Metro, as well as the state. It's been a bit of hit or miss because grant processes are very complex and there are a lot of different eligibility issues. Right now, I am in the middle of working on a regional funding flexibility allocation grant through Metro, which will go towards mostly funding the trail and the asphalt aspects of this, so the active transportation. That's kind of what we're looking at first, is getting the trail itself done, and then it'll be sort of a piecemeal to get all the other components put in afterwards. But as part of all of our obligations to the state and to Metro, we've done cultural assessments, so we've gone through and got what's done as called a SHPO, so we've done a surface pedestrian survey of it for any kind of cultural significance. We've also done wetland delineation, so as you can see on the map, some wetlands that have been identified there, so there's some environmental work that's been put into this. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done for surveying, for engineering, for, as I mentioned, making sure that we are abiding by all the regulations from the federal government with the DPA corridor and through BDE and the gas pipeline that runs through it. But this concept is just pretty much surface level based on feedback that we have received
Commissioners. I'm Kimmy Sloop with Concert Engineering, and I've been in charge of... Is the next mic?
Yeah,
On the mic. That disconnects. Okay. Okay. Hi. I'm Kimmy Sloop, and I'm with Concert Engineering, and I was leading the public involvement, the public engagement for this project. As Max mentioned, the city's going after a lot of different grants for this project, and one of the key things that a lot of the grants are looking for is involvement of the public in coming up with the design plans, and especially a diverse representation of the public. So we did many different outreach efforts, about 5 different outreach efforts from April through June, and we really tried to get feedback from people who live near the park, people who are within the city, all ages, all incomes, park users, to try and get a broad range of input. So the slides there show the kind of the summary of what we've done. So the next slide shows that we reached out. We had 5 different types of outreach strategies. We had about 450 people participate. The first thing we did was talk to interested parties. So we had some interviews with homeowner associations, sports organizations, neighborhood associations, to just asking them questions, trying to understand kind of what was important, what were some of the key things and ways to reach the public. Then we also had, as Max mentioned, we had an open house in May where it was attended by about 50 people. Most of those were over the age of 55. Direct mailers and invitations for that went to all the households within the King City city limits, as well as the unincorporated adjacent area, so the neighbors to this area. Most of the attendees were over 55 and likely did not have children living at home based on the conversations that we had with them, and many of them lived near the park. The next thing we did was have a field day we did both a field day at Deer Creek Elementary, so we talked to the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders at the school and had each of them on their field day. They came through and asked, and we got feedback from them. And let me back up for a second. The feedback that we sought from everyone, we asked them basically 2 different questions. One was, what type of amenities do you want in the park? Do you want passive recreation, so more of the walking, nature type things? Do you want active recreation, basketball courts, soccer court fields, things where you're really pretty active? Gathering places and play areas, so like playgrounds, picnic areas, community gardens, dog parks, and then access to the river was the 4th thing we asked them about. And then we also asked them to identify their top 3 preferences for park features, and we had a list of about 15 different features that we had developed for them to identify the 3 that would be their top priorities in the park. So those were the questions asked at the open house. We asked the same questions at field day with the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, so we were able to talk to 6 of the different classrooms, and then the handful of adults that were helping also provided input. There was a pop-up booth at the King City Community Park during some of the sports practices for a couple hours, had the plans out, had people come in and do the same thing, identify what their priorities were. And then we also had a community survey that was on the city website. And that was also advertised in the mailer and at the different events for people to participate in the online survey. There were 170 people who provided feedback. About 75% of the survey respondents were between the ages of 25 to 55, with an average household size of 3.4. So there were more families and younger folks that participated in the survey. So just to give you a kind of a sense of who provided input where, because some of the input was different. And some of the people who participated in the survey did participate, attended the open house or attended at the school or the pop-up in the park events as well. At the pop-up event, there were about 50 to 60 people who participated in that as well. So really good participation in all the different ways. So how that input from everyone was used. Each of the pieces of input kind of built on each other. So the first with the stakeholder interviews, we got feedback from the people we interviewed that helped identify kind of what the questions should be, what the amenities should be. For example, access to the river came out of the stakeholder interviews. It was a pretty obvious that was and people were interested in that, so we added that to the community survey. And also like how to go out and talk to people. So a lot of people said talk to the kids at the school. So that's one of the things that we did there. The open house, before the open house, the equestrian trail was not on the list of amenities that was an option, and that was added. So the folks, at the school and at the pop-up at the park were able to identify that as one of their chosen amenities, whereas the other groups didn't. And then all of the input was used to help shape the final design. The amenities, the locations, the priorities, all of that input was used to create the plan that you see today. So what we heard from all of that input, people are excited about having a place to meet their friends, their neighbors, to play, to be outside. That was big. It was obvious that they want more of that in the community. The neighbors in particular was particularly concerned about traffic and noise impacts, the potential for increased crime, having people who are not in their neighborhood coming into their neighborhood, concerns about people camping, hanging out in the park, kind of that unfamiliarity. Some of the top priorities were places to gather, so playgrounds, community gardens, picnic areas, and then also river access. And then the different park amenities preferences. So remember, each group was asked their top 3 priorities, and they're different for each of the different groups. So the open house was more interested in paved trails for walking and jogging, river access, open fields and meadows. The survey, they wanted a paved trail for walking and jogging and river access, but also playgrounds. And then those who were the younger kids and those pop-up at the park, they wanted the playground, the off-leash dog park, and the basketball courts. So they were much more interested in the active recreation things that they like to do. So this graphic just shows the difference. Participants were asked to put stickers for the different types of amenities. So this shows where they chose to put the different amenities from the open house and the school and park feedback, and that just relates to what you see here. So a good example is the soccer field. You can see on the school and park feedback, there's a whole bunch of like purple dots. That's the soccer field. So that is actually where the public said they wanted it. Obviously, the river access is at the river. Although some kids did put it in the wetlands, but knew that wouldn't work. The neighborhood parks, the community gardens, all of that as well. So that's pretty much the final design came from the community outreach. Some of the concerns from the public has a lot to do with how it's managed and what these specific design elements were. For example, there was concerns about the basketball court or the soccer fields of balls going into the street. That can be addressed through design, putting a fence around the basketball court. So they weren't really specific concerns about the design of the park. People were really excited about that. Probably the biggest concern was the road crossings and traffic and not entering the neighborhood. But we also explained that the roads are in the TSP, they're part of the project, and that's why they're here. That's not for discussion and change as part of the park plan. Any questions about what we heard?
Any questions from the commissioners?
Or want more detail?
To me,
Sure.
Sheriff Banner,
yeah.
I do have a statement I'd like to make since any actual or potential interest shall be disclosed at the meeting regarding potential conflict of interest. I live in Edgewater on the Tualatin, and since the proposed west side park would affect property values and positively, negatively, I feel it's necessary that it knows that I may have. So it's a statement, I think,
Yeah.
that,
This
yes,
So we can do that at when you guys decide vote.
well,
This is
make
not-
a statement, so.
I know, but right now, so you want to make it later though. So when somebody does, you're moving a motion, and you move to a discussion,
Okay.
that's when you want to do a potential conflict.
This is not,
Can I
You can still say it, and I'll put it in the minutes for sure.
No, my question would be then, before I make any comments, do I need to say that? If I comment and ask questions? Just before I vote, so it's okay to interact? Okay.
And this is not a public,
But,
where, when you do have to say conflicts at the beginning of the hearing.
okay, it's only at a hearing, not in the meeting?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know, most of us are new, so it's okay.
I did attend that ethics training, so.
In his defense,
Yeah,
the
no,
ethics kind of scares me.
no, I wasn't criticizing, no.
Yeah,
It's-
no.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner, I appreciate that.
Yes. Other questions?
I have a ton, should I just do one at a time, or anyone else that has questions, interrupt.
Well, go ahead.
So the restrooms, are they buildings?
They're real.
Do we know, I've done a lot of survey work under transmission lines. Are buildings fitted in the transmission line right away?
So, I can answer that. EPA,
These are in the PGE.
they are. I can't exactly, Jean might know, I can't exactly remember what the parameters for PGE are, but EPA indicated that the restroom geometry is 10 by 10 by 10. And if you look, they're not exactly underneath the power lines, they're in between the power lines.
They, transmission companies, right away, in the right of way.
But that was the geometry. that we
Normal.
used, 10 by 10 by 10. And it was more also concerns over the sewage because of the Kinder Morgan pipeline. Which I think going back is one of the reasons why there's no restrooms at the park.
I assume that there'll be water.
Batteries are dead.
Yeah,
Yeah, so this will be fed through Purple Line recycled water. But then the idea is to also get a Tigard water line to come down. But the restrooms will be recycled water, and that'll also be what waters the community gardens and the dog park and all the rest of the grass and stuff. And it's still in early concept, but what we would like to see is some wetland, like restoration work to actually enhance the wetlands, because there's kind of basic grasslands right now, but that would be some permitting that would need to be done with CWS and some coordination there. But those conversations are just starting to happen.
How long is the park?
It's about 4/5 of a mile. So,
We're getting a lot in a
Yeah.
really small space.
But again, this is concept.
Yeah.
Is the plan. The things that are in the purple are the high priority, and the things that are in the beige are like low priority. So as far as, when it will happen and the timing of it, of course, funding is the first priority, but that will help. You'll be able to see as things develop how much stuff is in the park.
Okay, yeah, because I was wondering then what will be the process for really designing the park?
what do you mean?
Well, you have to hire a firm to,
So the first thing that's being designed is the trail, to take it to the next, so as I said,
You
it's.
guys need to stand next to each other because you're both talking.
Okay, it's 15% design now.
Okay.
So the next layer would be taking it to like 30% design for the trail specifically, is the next piece of it.
Okay, and then,
It's going to be designed essentially in a timeline that the funding that we can. So all the different funding sources, for example, you can get maybe a skate park grant from Tony Hawk's Skate for America. And if we can get that, then we can start working on the skate park. Or depending on, the public interest for the community gardens, those are the certain things that we'll have to explore once we get all the land and all the rights and the land use agreements in place. But the priority is the path number one.
I think it's important, I mean, right now we have a concept plan, we have blobs where we're gonna put certain things, but, what I'm seeing is a lot being put in there, and if we were to get all the funding for it, there's gonna be a lot. And, okay, trying to form my thoughts that are coherent. Often, at in landscape firms, we design a park in, so that part of it can be built, that everything is designed at the beginning, and then it's built in parts. If it's not designed in the beginning, you may end up with an incoherent space that people won't feel right in. I mean, that's kind of what I specialized in, spaces for people to feel good in. And so it's like, if it isn't a little bit farther on than this, what I'm saying is we run into the danger of, a patchwork of projects. For instance, I think that the bathroom's too small. If it's just one man and one woman for all of these people, it's gonna be too small. So I'm concerned about the way we're going about this, that's all. That's my, ask me questions about what I'm trying to say. Okay. Yeah. All right.
In your mind, it would be better to take like the whole thing to 30%. Do all of the design together so you understand the relationship between the different pieces and how they relate to each other to make sure that the connections between them work well,
Yes.
rather than just saying, we're going to design a playground and completely and build it, and then a community garden next to it. It may or may not relate. So if you had to put a pipe in,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
you planned for that pipe originally, you're not going back and trying to make it work, trying
Yes.
to fit it in.
Uh-huh. Right.
But I guess my question is, in order to apply for a lot of the grants, we have to have a concept plan. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And then at that point, we can go and get to do the work to get it to the 30%, or we're actually building anything.
So it sounds like if we went for grants it covered multiple pieces of it, that would be a better way to go, in your opinion, so that we would plan more together.
Yes.
By different pieces.
Yes.
Yeah. There needs to be a concept plan in order to even go after the grant.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Max, but we have had funding to develop this plan at all, right?
This plan to reach the 15% was funded from a Metro Trails Fund.
Right, that's what I thought.
That has gotten us this far, and I'm pretty sure this is as far as that's
Is
going
that the end of the money for that? Okay, that's what I thought. So the next step is going to be for additional, what Carol's talking about is going to mean, we're going to need additional money in order to fine tune what we have now, right?
Yeah, we were funded to get to this design, and also employ Kimmy and Fujans and Consort, our consultant, to do the public outreach efforts and the preliminary design.
Max, you need to be using your mic. Oh, it's dead, okay.
So that's picking up on audio on here, but
You want to give me some batteries?
Joys of modern technology.
Yeah. But it is nice that we're looking at, we've been thinking so much about King City Terrace that this is nice to see something closer than
Right.
what's going to be over there.
And I mean, this, as I mentioned, this was in the Metro's West Side Trail Master Plan 10 years ago. So well, the master plan was published and finalized 10 years ago.
Okay.
It's been
Right.
in the works for, so it's 10 years, and just now we're starting to get the ball rolling on it, which I think is good progress, at least.
Could I ask a question to clarify that? The master plan 10 years ago showed a straight line trail going all the way up, down, I think it was down the middle, and it showed a couple of paths going to that trail from Edgewater, walking paths. That's what I picked up from looking at that plan. That seemed to me to be a separate thing with just a trail. Now, what you're doing seems is it's been proposed to add the park. And those seem to me to be two separate things. One is the trail, and now on top of the trail, we're adding a park. Is that correct?
That's correct. So if you look at the Metro Master Plan, it doesn't really have any kind of guidance or specifications as to telling the cities or the jurisdictions what they should do with their space, other than just having the trail. It's just like, a trail should be here, do with that what you will, kind of thing. So they
Max?
gave you some authority.
Max, could you describe what has occurred in the trail, through Beaverton and unincorporated Washington County, what those folks have done?
Yeah, so a good example would be over at Reed's Crossing and Butternut Creek, which are over in South Hillsborough.
Excuse me, ma'am, I can tell you have a hearing. Would you move up so that it's easier for you to hear?
Hey,
The microphone would be helpful, including up there.
I've got my mic on, so,
thank you, Ronnie.
Concentrate.
yeah, I was trying to make it easier for you to hear.
Hopefully this works now. So yeah, so South Hillsborough, Reed's Crossing, and Butternut Creek are a good example. I remember there were some questions earlier about the community garden. So Reed's Crossing has community garden, albeit it is part of the HOA that's adjacent to their power line trail, but it is fenced off. It has metal cylindrical plant beds that you can rent out. You get assigned a number. And Mike and I went up there a few weeks ago, and I mean, it was pretty awesome. There was like a grill pit and a bunch of tomatoes and probably about 40 different single planter boxes throughout that. Also, that's where we got the idea for the BMX course, because, you know, it's not a bowl. It's more just, it's kind of surface level ramps that is kind of in like a figure 8, which might not be good for you, Gretchen, but I'm sure some people would appreciate it. If you go over to, I can't remember the name of the park, but I do know that there's a tennis court over in Beaverton by where my brother lives. That's right underneath the power lines. And so it'll be interesting to see what the feedback is once we really start getting into our agreements with PGE and BPA to what they will allow. Because up to now, we have heard a couple different contradictory things from their engineers. Some have said that we can have a basketball court, and some have said we absolutely can't. So that will be interesting. That will come when we actually finalize a land use agreement, which we're currently in the very beginning stages of with BPA. And that'll kind of dictate what all we can put in this. But that'll also be a living document in the sense to, depending on grading or funding or how we can sort of finagle things in, we'll have to amend that agreement later on to see if we can accommodate some of these. But for the most part, everything that's programmed underneath these power lines are elsewhere within the power line corridor. Maybe not quite as concentrated.
This man's put on.
We have limited space.
So next, I'm sorry. I was just question was, generally speaking, I'm gathering that there were no mandates from Metro as to what needed to be in anyone's space. You're kind of saying, do a trail and the rest is on your whatever you guys can come up with.
That's as far as I understand it, yeah. They basically just, because Metro is all about their regional trails.
Yeah.
They do have regional parks, but they're big on their trails, and so this is part of the trail master plan itself. And yeah, it's a straight line, but what we did with the angle is it's kind of just generally more interesting to have a curved pathway than it is just to have a straight line. That's also safer. And as you can see, we did kind of angle it in ways to accommodate some of these other amenities. The soccer field being the most obvious example.
How wide is the trail going to be? The question being, will it accommodate people in wheelchairs and, having people with various levels of disability?
Trail is 10 feet, 12 feet? 12 feet. Plus the 8-foot equestrian side.
First the asphalt, and then 2 feet of gravel on either side, and then you have the road trail.
So 10 feet, 2 feet of gravel on either side, so 16 feet including the gravel, and then the side trail.
So you wouldn't have the horses on the asphalt trail?
Some people have horses, they live over out on that.
Sorry, I didn't mean for you to hear me.
I have 2 questions.
Carol's
One is I'm really old, and we used to worry about things happening under, it not being unhealthy under power lines. Can you answer that? Can you?
So we spoke to BPA, land use engineer, or land use authority, I don't know his position. But he said that, yes, that is a common concern, but there is no medical reason to be concerned. He said that occasionally you might get like a static shock, but that would be the worst thing if you're like bombing on your bike going down and you're not good. But he didn't indicate that there would be any concern of being directly underneath the power lines.
My other question has to do with conflict between pedestrians, bicycles, and horses. It's something just that we're going to have to consider.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and unfortunately, there's not enough space to have a dedicated bike lane. But it's a common concern for
I think
everyone.
we're going to have, I think we have to have signs that say pedestrians have the right of way.
That question about a map that was shown, do I need to hold this down?
Yeah, if you hold on the blue and stick right in. The red that keeps it going.
Yeah, I think they can hear you.
I'll get it closer.
Okay. The map that was shown at the elementary school did not show any streets or street connections going across it.
Mm-hmm.
The current map has added where those potential street crossings could be. I guess it's just for information. However, at that first meeting at the elementary school, the only thing that people could comment on were the positive amenities to add to the park. There was no discussion or comment on street crossings. And so I'm concerned that outreach maybe wasn't complete in that it should have shown street crossings and given the community more input on where those would be. Do you have any comments on that?
So the rollout map, you're correct, only had arrows indicating where the streets were planned to be. They did not have these designs, mostly because they weren't finalized yet. We did receive community feedback from that event regarding some of the streets. For example, the property owner down here was concerned about impacts on her property line with the Fisher Road connection, and we worked with our engineers specifically to move that connection further north to avoid any impacts to her property. And we also received a lot of feedback from the streets through the community survey, and those were put into our report as well. But you're right, they weren't on that map at that time.
Yeah. Is that working? This
You're
is-
on.
This is working at it. They had, you did First Concord, you guys did a great outreach. I feel I'm very impressed with it. All of that. I think the point that was just brought up is critically important one, in that part of, looking for the grants, part of, the report you made is full complete citizen involvement. As far as not, without showing the roads on the early maps or the, one at the school, that occurred at a time which was comparatively recently after the recall. Communities were in a attempt to work together, coordinate, and were actually specifically requested, do not bring up the TSP. And back the picture of that event. It is when I overheard someone bring it up and pretty promptly dismissed. And you asked really good questions all throughout on what do you want? What are you excited about? I'm excited about it. I think this is awesome. But I think the question we missed was, what do you not under? An example would be pickleball. I'm a pickleball player. I'd love to have a pickleball. I would vote against a pickleball court because even though I'd love to play it, I do not want a pickleball specifically. Mixing the roads into the plan about showing that as you're soliciting input, I think I walked away feeling manipulated. I advised community, don't bring it up. We've been asked not to bring it up. Let's do good relations. I think that's a value I have to King City, and my credibility took a huge shot on this because prelim, future road, all of a sudden, final, here's the roads. It's important for us to get full community feedback, and I think we're not ready at this point to recommend approval. Now, I think we're not done until the community is
So,
I'll be back later.
okay, so you're suggesting we go out and do another set of outreach?
I think so, because I think we're not done. I think we weren't complete, and that's so, it's more important to get it right than it is to get it fast. And I think it's critical for us with our community relations to get it right.
Speaking from the staff perspective, my concern then would be people only talking about the roads, which are, from the city perspective, outside of anything else in the city, are already a set deal and past business that's already been settled. But you make a good point. Does anyone else have any questions?
You often think of what access will be from kind of our side. What kind of access will most of the access be from the other side if you're driving down, or?
So with these streets, initially, since 137th will not be built to accommodate traffic, these will be stubbed on 137th, and will only be accessible from the east side. So they won't be accessible to traffic from 137th until the city or the county is able to actually improve 137th. It doesn't have any sidewalks. It doesn't have any lines. The intersection can't accommodate excess traffic. They're programmed into it because it's in the PSP, but they wouldn't be functional until those necessary improvements are made somewhere down the road.
Okay.
And so access would only be coming in from the east.
that brings up parking. Would the parking all be in the field by the current park?
So there's a couple parking spots. One here is on Capulet. There's some right here on Cordelia, and also in this alley and down there. But the bulk of the parking will be down here, and this is going to be this sort of loop that I think it's like 30-something extra lots.
That's where the current field is, by the park.
Well, yeah, down here on the south end.
Yeah.
So Max, what time constraints do we have in terms of coming up with preliminary acceptance or not of this plan, or waiting for more input or whatever? What are we bumping up against? Anything in terms of the grants or any other things you're talking about?
Not necessarily. The main grant that I'm applying for right now, as I mentioned, the Regional Flexible Fund Allocation Grant, that is due November 15th. So this will be, unless we meet again later this month, pretty much the only time, or the first or the second Tuesday in November. But by then, that application is going to be almost 100% complete. That's going to be a big one. If we don't secure funding through that grant, there's a lot of grants out there, but that's the one that I'm focused on right now. And that's more or less why I brought this meeting today, so I could see what your input is to see if I can incorporate any feedback from today into that grant application.
Could you explain which grant that is again, please?
So it's a Metro grant, the Portland Metro region, or the Metro, the entity Metro. It's federally funded, and it's the Regional Flexibility Funding Allocation Grant, Step 2. So Step 2 is for capital projects, which is what this is.
I would suggest, because it's confusing language here, that instead of calling this a final design, they call it a final concept. This is what we're thinking about doing this, and we're pretty sure this is what we're going to do. But because when you say final design, that means let's get out the engineering.
Yeah. If I said design, then that would be a misspeak. It's concept design.
It's labeled final design.
Okay, I'll accept.
Max, I have a question, I'm sorry.
No, tell me.
Since the trail itself is really a separate thing from Metro, and the park is King City, can it be done, can you do funding for just getting the trail started and get that going, and then not have to do the concept plan for the park and do them separate?
So the RFFA grant is going to be sought to only fund the trails, the street connections, and the parking lots, the asphalt aspect of it.
So the parking lots are in those places.
Yeah, right. Yes.
What street connections?
The street connections that are programmed into the park. So Fisher, Capulet, and Montague.
Does that mean you would actually build transportation facilities across the easement?
They will be built and they will be stubbed and end right there on 137th.
And I thought development, SDC funds were supposed to be used to build roads.
Well, they fund the street connections, and they actually were requesting a minimum of $4 million for any kind of funding. And so we had to request more than what the trail would just cost. And by including the street connections, we crossed their minimum threshold of funding. And if we can get funding from outside sources, those SBCs will be used for matching that funding. We're also going to be asking Washington County for M-STEP opportunity funding, which is going to be later this month. But we're just trying to get all the outsource funding that we can, so we can just try to get other entities and agencies to pay for our projects. That just seems fiscally responsible.
why would you build roads that aren't needed for the east-west connections of Kingston Terrace well before they're needed, well before development occurs?
Development will occur with the park. The park itself is development. And so the whole point of the transportation plan is when development occurs on those lots, the streets that are in place in the TSP are built during that development. So since we're the ones that are developing the West Side Trail, the streets are going to be developed with the West Side Trail because it is with the development. But again, they will be stubbed on 137, so it's going to dead end right there until X amount of time.
So the next question is, why can't it be deferred until development occurs, build it later after the trail? Do you know where it's going to be?
It just doesn't really make sense to put down asphalt and then tear it up and to disrupt the operations of a park to construct something when you, one, have funding to get it done now, and two, it's already been passed as a plan in place. And also with the connections, there's some utilities that the city would like to bring over in Stubbs, so our water lines, our sewer lines would all, since you're already in the ground and you're doing those operations, you would want to get your utilities across as well, because that's going to be necessary infrastructure down the road regardless. So they are kind of packaged together.
Becky? I've got a lot of questions, I'm sorry. The parking for the park doesn't seem adequate. The number of parking slots you have for what are being planned, like for a soccer field, where are people that are coming to play soccer with their parents and their kids going to park? Up by the mobile home park, you've got two facilities up there that show no access and no parking close to it. I'm concerned along the highway or the South 137. When that gets developed, will there be sidewalks on both sides? Will there be parking and access from 137? There's just a lot of questions I have about
Access and parking.
That's a completely fair concern, and we also received some public feedback echoing that. I mean, in my mind, if we were to do, because right now 137th is a county road, it's under county jurisdiction, and it's not in the city. It's also difficult to maybe plan for parking because you have this Clean Water Services swale that goes down. But accommodating more parking is definitely something that we can take the feedback from and try to incorporate later on, because we definitely don't want to plug up Edgewater with a bunch of outside parking. And yeah, if you have a soccer field with 25, 30 kids and all their families, that's going to need a lot of parking.
Is the soccer field, what kind of a league, or is it going to be just kind of a?
Currently, there's a couple soccer leagues that operate at the King City Community Park.
Okay.
But yeah, I would imagine, I think this is a standard youth size for a soccer field, so it would be sanctioned for leagues, and it would function as a regular soccer field.
So they could be playing at both fields?
Yeah, I don't see why not. Just right now, there's some scheduling conflicts at the community park because of the baseball field and the soccer field. So, you know, you big kids, if you've got a good swing of the bat, might hit it out into the soccer field. But the whole point is to try to open up, because we don't want this to take away from the King City Community Park. We want this to add to the park and sort of alleviate some of the stressors there right now. Which is why initially we did have the idea of having like a tennis court, because there's only one tennis court. We had the thought for a basketball court. We only have a half court right now. So it was more of kind of building on what's there. But yeah, it's a work in progress.
I also have more questions too. Have we talked to the city of Tigard about what they're going to be doing across the street? Because I know that I approached other parks, you know, I'll be approaching this by East Bend if I'm not in the neighborhood, and go, oh, this is a really cool place. Will there be,
Probably 137th would be the best access at some point.
but will it be welcoming off of East Bend at all?
If you're going south,
If you're just going along Beach Bend and you go, hey, this is a cool park.
there could definitely be some wayfinding. We could look into monumentation and having like a kind of an egress or an ingress, sort of like, welcome to West Side Trail. I mean, we could come up with a name too. It doesn't have to be West Side Trail Second One. That doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. Those are good ideas, but we can definitely look to incorporate.
Did you have another question?
I have another question, so I can ask away. Okay. Long-term maintenance costs for the park. Has there been any indication of what those costs will be to maintain it? And how it gets paid for, and whether or not, King City residents should be informed of what those cost increases and maybe bond measures or taxes that might be required to pay for the long-term maintenance?
That is a great question. As you know, King City's growing, and Kingston Terrace just was approved for 1,200 homes. That's going to bring in FCC revenue, but ultimately, we only have one staff person working Parks and Rec, right, or Public Works and Parks and Rec, the same guy. So we're going to need more staff, regardless of any kind of, whatever happens with this park, there's not going to be a way that's sustainable for us to maintain the staff level that we have right now and operate King City proper and the new King City at the same time. It's just not feasible. But the hope is that revenue from all the new homes will make it to where any kind of tax increases will be minimal, if any. But that's a question more for Mike than it is for me. I'm not really a finance guy at all.
Yes. I ended up spending hours trying to find what funded what. I don't think the roads crossing the park are included in the FT funds as is. That's my suggestion for providing information for the city. But what I think would be super helpful is this map with the roads and specifying on crossing roads, 137th intersection, Fisher from 137th to the Bankston Conservation Easement, what the funding sources are on those. Because, right now I look at a giant map and a giant table and back and forth, and it's pretty.
Budget?
Pardon?
You're looking at the city budget?
I'm looking at the piece that shows here's the planned transportation improvement.
Project list from the CSD, yeah.
You know what I'm looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And it's difficult. But it's straightforward. This is the concept. Concept includes building the roads, and you know, it's like the grant application says. City council encourages community involvement and feedback throughout the project planning and implementation phases to ensure the West Side Trail Park reflects needs and values of King City residents. I think that's critical, that we embrace even the things we might not want to hear.
That's specifically the funding?
The funding, the fact that the project includes the roads, because that wasn't included in the outreach. It was future roads. And you know, vision statements, you know, the roads won't be built till there's development. You know, we're talking development's gonna come from the west to the east. So 20 years down the road, but there's been a lot of statements out there that now we're hearing that this is development. That's fine. But let's be straightforward. Let's be honest. Let's get this information to people, the citizens, yes, to collaborate with them.
I agree.
Yeah,
Okay, you, Commissioner.
thank you. There's an issue with the Edgewater HOA owning land that's needed for the park. One of the, things that were in the, Metro plan, I looked at it today, it's on page 28 of that plan, that said in some BPA-owned corridor areas, they previously granted easements, but these easements will have to be quitclaimed or the land will have to be acquired. And until the Edgewater HOA decides whether or not they can sell the land, I'm concerned that developing a concept plan without knowing the outcome of that might be a little premature. That's my concern.
So as far as the BPA corridor goes, ongoing conversations with BPA, we met with them earlier this
I
week.
need to interject.
Edgewater and BPA have no common land.
That's correct.
BPA is on the west side. PGE has an easement over the Edgewater land on.
So they're essentially two different corridors. You've got the PGE one, which, as Commissioner Blair mentioned, is on the east side and does go over the Edgewater properties. And then you have the BPA, which are the two power lines on the west side. We've been talking to BPA, and it's more or less, it's the federal government. They're not willing to sell the land, but they are willing to grant us essentially a permanent easement through a land use agreement. And that land use agreement, as I mentioned earlier, will kind of dictate what, at the time, we're authorized to put onto the land itself. As far as the PGE one, those conversations are also still ongoing, although they haven't come quite as far along as the BPA.
Max, where is on the map, where is this Edgewater component?
So it is pretty much, I'm trying to think. Yeah.
I can go. That matters.
I think-
Yeah, I'm looking at it from
I
here.
think it might be helpful for all of us to go down and see where he's pointing.
Well, he hasn't found it yet.
Well, while we're getting down there, I really think we should. Let's go.
Right.
Or leave it.
I'm not gonna get up until you move. You go ahead and go behind me.
There's,
Is there room?
So it's from right here down, right?
Yes, you're right. It's all the way from
It's
Capulet,
Capulet
all the way down to,
to right here.
Yes.
This is city property down.
Yeah, this
Yep.
is owned,
That's all the,
so BPA owns the strip all the way, this half, all the way up and down.
yeah, the far half. So if you look closely, you can see the yellow line
Yep.
in the middle.
yeah.
Everything closer to you, Gary, is BPA.
and then,
Everything closer to us is PGE
It's Edgewater and,
and private ownership, so Edgewater and the mobile home estates.
so
basically half
of the strip is privately owned.
Oh, yeah, a little less than half, but
Yeah.
yeah.
How many times do pedestrians have to cross traffic
Where,
throughout the?
well, there won't be traffic initially, but, I mean, it'll depend on what the traffic rates are. But what we're trying to do is, if you see these kind of chevron cross sections, those will be raised beds, and we'll have some signage and pedestrian buttons that you can do, so you get flashing lights, and it'll be pedestrian friendly. We're going to make it in a way to where cars have to slow down to get around this. Even speaking with some traffic engineers over at Kittleson, when they looked at our concept for the roundabout, they angled it a little bit differently to make the angle radius tighter to encourage cars to slow down more. So that's kind of being thought of as a way to encourage to accommodate the active transportation aspect of it.
It's a roundabout right in the middle, basically. With the pipeline and the natural gas lines there, do you know the impact that that will have on their access for maintenance to those lines?
So the pipeline goes down about 50 feet.
Could you come up so we could hear, because your voice is very soft?
Please ask, I don't know if you heard his question about maintenance.
Yeah, so the gas, it's a pipeline. It's not a gas line, it's more of a petroleum kind of pipeline. Petroleum and then natural gas also, right? Right. Okay. So from here, they're relatively deep, and by the time you get to that point, they're probably 60 feet deep. What would it be as you go over there? They're shallow. They could be 3 feet. They could be 4 feet. So any excavation would impact them. And this is one of the points that will be discussed with them when we get to that point. So we don't know if this is even feasible. It's always, there's always a way to make it work. I mean, if the pipeline is shallow, we can probably go deeper. But what is important is to find out where it is exactly and then set the final grades accordingly.
So, I'm looking here, this will be at what point will this be, will the pavement end? You know what I'm asking here?
It would depend on the right-of-way where the right-of-way ends. So
okay.
I think it's the dotted line.
Yeah,
That's the,
all right.
that's the right-of-way for under 37.
Yeah.
Okay.
Step out there.
This doesn't.
Oh, so
Yeah.
this,
This dotted line is the right of way.
The north-south dotted line.
okay. So what I'm saying is, that gives you parking at the end of these stub outs.
Yeah, the concern there is turn radius, if cars
Yeah.
turn around and fire access. So we've had that thought.
Parking here, parking here.
Yeah,
Parking
but-
down here, parking here. It's quite a bit of.
If it's wide enough, you can put in parallel spaces that people can come in and go out of.
As a temporary.
And if you were to maybe, stripe them, that would direct people to park correctly. You know, give themselves a 3-point.
What a concept.
Oh, yeah.
Cook's Park, Cook's Family Park, bigger than this, but I think there's like over 400 parking spaces at that park.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Have you ever had a hard time parking? Never had a hard time parking.
No, but I'm just making a comparison to what we're planning here and
Yeah.
whether it's adequate. And one of the things that the homeowners association is dealing with is parking for residents along the alleyway.
Right.
And
So, yeah, there's some conversation.
Actually, illegal parking,
it's what?
illegal parking.
Yeah, they're concerned about that. And so one
Mike,
of the uses they might want to do
Is add parking for themselves.
yeah.
And that might be a condition for getting the land, if that's permit parking, or if we have these parking lots and it's like, hey, you can park, residential parking after 7 o'clock or something and not park parking. And, there's like ways to do that.
Like we have down
Trade-off.
on.
Like overnight parking for residents.
I have a garage, so I'm
The
okay.
apartment complex, bigger parking all over.
Oh, right, yeah, okay.
Good
Yeah,
idea.
they work.
So we
Okay, I just have a suggestion with that, yeah, you've got, that's a space here for maybe, a turn-in and,
Remember, this is a tower.
that's a tower, okay.
These are poles, they're not gonna move.
Okay, all right, never mind.
And you better not touch them.
Because I'm,
Yeah, we don't want cars.
I'm driving along, and I don't want to, cause accidents, Wish there was some way to give some sort of, turn off or a
access.
and the gas.
Never mind, okay.
That's not
So we
gonna
don't.
happen.
It's not gonna add, doesn't.
Okay, Kate Tiger,
Mm.
can you add parking over here?
No.
And actually, this is.
This is in the
gonna be
county.
Yeah,
This is the
unincorporated.
problem,
This is county?
all that
Yeah.
is the county,
Yeah.
Oh.
and they don't have a parks department, which is why they haven't built any parks on Bull Mountain.
Okay.
They do have a park, come on the board.
Now,
Yeah.
they have one,
Yeah.
Well, Ronnie, work on it, man.
Full Mountain Park,
Yeah.
but they didn't require any SDCs for parks in any of the development in the county.
Oh,
So there's no money.
How about gardens, we just call them parking gardens? Because we got a lot of parking lots.
What would be consideration for putting these kind of things next to the mobile home park and the noise?
This is the low priority thing.
Right, low priority, but if you're proposing them, I wonder whether, I'm just
Yes.
questioning the noise and the,
I mean, I don't think a skate park or a BMX course is gonna be any loud. Well, maybe a skate park, if it's a bowl, but again, I don't think we're really looking at bowl concrete. A playground is gonna be, loud and noisy. Dog park is gonna have like barking dogs. I think noise is kind of just,
Is BMX, powered?
no.
Oh, okay,
It's bikes.
okay.
There are,
Oh. I've done other parks, been involved in other park designs that have skate parks and BMX courses, and there are ways to like soften the noise in the design that they do, so that's more,
Yeah, do consideration for some buffering
yeah.
on the back of their property.
you just don't see access to it, though, is the thing. Parking, I guess you have to park down here and
Park here.
Ride your bike up.
ride your bike.
yeah,
Ride your
bikes,
bike
so
up.
Yeah.
That's a steep one. I can barely walk it.
it's not
But
that
I'm
bad.
old.
Lots of details.
Gradient from north to south is what, like 5% gradient,
2%,
2%?
2% grade. Pooja?
Oh.
2% grade?
What's the grade from the top to the
north,
bottom?
north to south.
I don't know for sure, but we can achieve the 8%.
8, which is the
Which
88.
is the
8%, so
Yeah.
the,
Kind of silly.
building of these facilities here, they need to be flat, so it'd be a lot of grading, and one end is gonna be graded up, and the other end,
Yeah, we chose a location where it's relatively flat.
it's the flattest. Okay.
Yeah, it's doable, so we've got some cuts on the one end and then some fill on the other,
So, yeah.
very minor. Yes, that will.
Potential bladder.
Yeah, 'cause it's much flatter down
Yeah.
there.
Keeper up here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and also 5 points somewhere in this area.
I'm not worried that the kids who want to use this facility, they're in good shape.
Okay.
They won't have a
They
problem.
won't have a problem getting to it, okay?
If we do.
Being married to a skater, they're gonna love this.
Skateboarders,
Huh?
skateboarders coming
Yeah.
down this way?
Ooh. They're gonna love from here.
Yeah,
to back here.
bike and I love it.
Yeah?
Because I go fast.
I know. My husband was one of the original guys.
Is that gonna be a problem, skateboarders using?
No, it won't be a problem unless they run over, pedestrians, like snowboarders run over skiers.
Or like us trying to walk up the hill?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, I was like, oh, this will be fun. I think you need to put,
actually, the skateboarders come screaming down the Lefty Parkway.
which parkway?
My
Royalty
street.
and-
Royalty.
Oh, it's quite a grade.
Oh.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and they have hit.
Tell me about the size of this soccer field. How is this something that high schools could use, or is it just for clubs or kids, or, it's not a full size, right?
Younger kids.
Yeah, I think it's once, like, Yeah,
It's 150 by 240.
smaller than a high school.
It's about half the size of a regular field.
Actually, that makes a difference,
Okay.
It's more of the same.
because
This is some sort of
because this is
standard size for a
It
is, but these are teenagers.
It'll be something else.
yeah.
Okay, can I just discovered something important.
Okay. Actually, they're the ones that stand.
Oh, okay. What's in the nature park?
So if you look at a nature park, yeah, here, what did you put in a nature park? You were landscaping.
Huh?
Nature park.
A nature park, a lot of, trees.
Is this the opposite
I
of what I
picture,
Is it a playground with?
it's like a natural playground that doesn't have all
Oh,
the
okay.
metal components of a regular playground.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
like a sand pit and, you know, sometimes you have like there's ones that you can like funnel water.
Yeah.
Oh,
This is a terrible location.
yeah, that's
I
terrible,
don't mean
yeah.
to say that, but yeah, BMX and skaters
Why
don't
not,
get here.
it's actually, the reason why it works
Oh,
next
yeah.
to these is because you have families that will use all of them, and you can have people watching kids play. Because the BMX courses,
Mhm.
this is not a BMX course. I don't think this is intended for a BMX course for like the people who are really, really serious BMX racers. These are the kids
Yeah, it's
who
more
can go and do jumps and try little things. So it's actually a really compatible use next to each other. There's a park in Salem where they have a playground
I know the one
area
you're
next
talking.
to,
I believe, next to the,
it's Gear Park that they're designing
military
there.
outpost.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, then it's designed next to each other.
So that the parents can be
So
supervising.
you can, parents can watch both and kids, and it keeps kids enclosed versus running through the park, or
Right.
the BMX.
Maybe we could
So,
switch where the skate park is and the nature
Yeah.
park, because then it'll be easier for the littler kids to get
That
a
was-
Yeah.
stroller
Yeah.
to adopt.
yeah.
And they're further away from people, and
Right. Would
Yeah.
that be a problem to swap those?
I don't see why,
Okay.
other than this has to be here because there's the pole,
Okay.
so you have a little bit less space.
you can design it and you
Okay.
can.
But these geometries aren't set in stone.
I got the same thing, because I hadn't thought of nature park as a, nature theme.
Same playground.
Okay, why don't we do that down there as well? Why don't we there's some really wonderful parks, playgrounds that are all nature. There are a lot of them that have, like a theme around the culture of the area. You know, part of it could be learning, you know, the trees, learning, things like little Conestoga wagons and pumps and things like that, you know.
Brought that up on top of Bull Mountain.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah.
And there, I mean, and it gives kids, more creative than climbing and sliding. And,
One of the thoughts too is that at least one of the playground play areas needs to be inclusive for wheelchairs.
right,
So you could still, I'm sure you
Right,
could
yeah.
still do the same,
Mhm.
but that was also
yeah.
the intent.
They have picnic tables on the list of things as well, so what is that? I don't see it as a marketing, but is that like part of one of the parks?
This could be at the community garden, they would be along the
Just kind of
pathway.
Scattered along.
Benches and picnic.
Probably some,
Playground.
maybe some by the, yeah. by
Another
the community
idea
garden.
that is incorporated into some of the other segments of these regional trails are to have little exercise stations. So it's like segmented every fifth of a mile, you
Yeah.
have a little station, like a way station that has a pull-up bar, or, you know, something
Yeah.
like that, and a bench.
They got two some parks like that.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
do. So that would be something that we could think about.
Highland hasn't figured it out.
Is the kayak,
Highland
Wait, wait a
got
minute
that, but they
oh,
figured it out.
is the kayak, entry area ADA acceptable? It looks like there's a big sloping area.
think it needs to be.
We're working on making that happen.
Okay.
There's gonna have to be some major regrading done because it is a big slope. And so we would have to reseed into the top of the hill and push the top of the hill back to increase the length of the ramp.
Yeah.
But that is something that we're discussing the possibilities of, and
Isn't that something that would be included in the grant to the Marine?
so the Oregon State Marine Board is meeting on October 23rd. I'll be a part of that meeting, and they're going to be voting on whether or not to approve a grant for the preliminary design of that kayak launch. So I have my fingers crossed that we'll get some funds from the Marine Board.
Great.
So if we can maybe go back to, and then I think I have maybe a suggestion.
Now, we had a really, really wonderful opportunity here to make,
Do we want people to come here for our park, or do we want to keep them away? People are.
So before I suggest my suggestion, does anyone have any final questions? I think we covered a lot.
Thank you, Gary, for that. That's my understanding that the public would have.
This is not a public hearing, and I understood that someone wanted to make a comment, so I will accommodate 3 minutes, and it needs to be directly related to what we're talking about tonight. Come on up, Janet. Yes, you have to come up here for the mic.
Very formal.
Hello, my name is Janet Black. I live over there. Okay, so one question I had, looked at the list of what the public wanted, and the BMX course, skateboard course, very bottom. So I'm curious, like, why was it included? I think that a concept plan, but by the way, I think it's really great. I mean, I'm not against this, but I think a concept plan becomes a plan once you approve it. So I would just ask the planning commission to be careful before you approve a concept plan to make sure you're okay with it. For instance, you talked about parking. You're concerned about parking. I'm concerned about parking. I'm concerned about parking down there. The things up here, you said you're going to work on it. Is it developed enough at this point to move forward to approving a concept plan? So I'm concerned about inadequate parking. I'm asking, are you going to be building the roads and subbing them? Are there maintenance costs associated with having roads there? Like, is there a cost associated with it that offsets building it later? You know what I'm saying? Okay, that's a question. I think it's important for the nature park. I think it's important to call it a nature-themed playground. I think that's a really good term for that. And there's some ideas that people had here, like where are the picnic tables or the exercise stations. I think it would be worth somehow letting the public take a look and give you ideas to maybe improve this. Did you get any input from Edgewater, for instance? They're right next to it. I mean, would they like to look at it before you approve it as a concept plan? I'm a little worried about approving a concept plan if you're not entirely comfortable that it's what you want it to be. Like, give yourself some time to think about it if you have questions about, is it really what you want? Because things that get approved, once they're approved, it kind of gets some momentum, and I think it's harder to change it later on. So that's just what I ask you to please. And I think
Great public outreach, that's great, and I think it wouldn't hurt
circle back and say, here's what we heard, is this what you meant to tell us? And it doesn't have, I don't think it has to be a big deal, but even if you give them the opportunity, and people don't show up, that's their problem, right? So I think it shows a measure of good faith in trying to, okay.
Thank you, Ms. Black. So based upon feedback from the public and general hearings that I've gathered from the Planning Commission, my suggestion would be to potentially postpone this to next month and do some more public outreach, have another open house, showcase this concept, publish a new survey on the website, work with Consor, and as Ms. Black mentioned, just kind of circle back and move forward from there. So that's my suggestion.
Would you still have time to do on the private grant you want?
Yeah. Well, so if we were to reschedule for November 13th, which is the second week in November, which would be the next, because 2 weeks is not enough time to do all this, so we would give ourselves a month. As I mentioned before, the grant application's due the 15th, so if it's mostly fine-tuned by that point, it shouldn't be that difficult to tailor in some more outreach efforts. And I mean, if what we do is good, and if you guys do approve it, then I don't see any, I mean, that would just be more beneficial for the grant application in general. So I think we would be okay.
There was some discussion about a grant that's called TGM.
There was. So the city council passed a resolution supporting the city pursuing a TGM grant. Unfortunately, after I spoke to Metro and ODOT a little bit further, they kind of told us that this wasn't eligible for that grant.
What is the TGM grant?
So it's a Transportation Growth Management Grant that basically the city had been approved for a TGM grant years ago in 2018 that helped fund the transportation system plan. So it's more or less like a planning grant, not necessarily a construction grant, and it's mostly for transportation aspects and not necessarily only active transportation, so like major road improvements or huge transportation overhauls and stuff like that. So it just kind of didn't fit the bill. Mm-hmm. Anyone have anything else for staff?
Apparently, we have somebody online who would like to make a statement. Don Mobley, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Thank you. So yes, I'm Don Mobley, and I live in Rivermead at 17030 Southwest 137th. I think you guys actually, I appreciate that the questions that were asked tonight, there was a lot of information that I had questions about. I think my top concerns, I would just repeat the same ones, bathrooms, being accommodating for the fact that you're going to get a lot of activity just from the water crossing alone. Parking is a big issue. I think not just for Edgewater, but for Rivermead as well. I do find it a little interesting that if this was a housing development going in, that you guys would be required to improve the street at 137th. If it was a development of homes, that is, if it was that kind of a development, and the fact that it's just kind of being ignored it's a little disheartening. I mean, I heard the excuses, but I'm just saying that seems like an easy way to push it off for later. So I do appreciate that you guys noted that you're going to put a barrier until the roads are up to snuff. But because that was mentioned, but I didn't really believe it. So I do appreciate you guys saying that tonight. I do feel a little awkward that there is no access from Beef Bend Road or access even from the mobile home park. Putting a skate park right next to a disenfranchised group of people, and it's also I do believe it's the highest crime area in King City is in that mobile home park, and setting a skate park right next to that crime area is probably, at least the research that I found, is not always the smartest thing
Ms.
to do.
Mobley,
Yes,
your time is up.
that was not 3 minutes.
Finish.
So I will wrap up. Thank you. But I do believe that that is something you should consider, seeing that like Tiger put theirs right next to the police department. That is kind of a sign. So yeah, so I just wanted to make sure I put it out there that parking's a concern. You need to think about the future. There will be a bridge there one day. So again, parking is a big deal. That access is going to be a main point. So anyhow, so good luck with your guys' planning. And I do think you need to think about the amenities that you're putting in there, because I also agree that there seems to be a lot of amenities and there's going to be a lot of traffic. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, I am hearing from staff that they would like to do some more work and have us come back a month from now. And if that's the agreement of folks, then we'll set a meeting for the second Wednesday in November, and you said that's the 13th?
That's the 13th, right?
Chair Gator, can I ask you a question about that? Is it the intent that at that meeting, the planning commission would be asked to approve the concept plan?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the 13th? Okay. So, we will continue this matter until November 13th, by which time staff will have done, some modifications in response to the questions and comments that were made this evening. Is there any problems with the consultant or staff? Is that going to work for you guys? Okay. We have no other business, I believe, this evening. Oh, I'm very sorry, we do have a workshop. So I'll close the discussion regarding the concept plan. Okay. All right, so I will adjourn the regular meeting and open the meeting for the workshop. Do we need to do roll call again?
No.
Okay.
Call it order. Give me.
Yeah, we need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Everybody,
Thank you. Thank you.
raise your hands, ladies and gentlemen.
To adjourn this planning meeting.
Okay. It's Jean's wife.
Oh, okay. I think,
It was over here.
Second.
yeah, Mary.
I'm trying to catch up on minutes here.
All right, so it's, getting a little late, but I'll try to be expedient with this.
Okay.
Motion for restroom.
Yeah, let's take that, well, Chair, would you like to take a recess?
We will,
Recess, because you've already adjourned.
Okay, I'll just wait for 5 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, men are a lot faster.
There's water over there, if anyone wants water, you can also get some chips. No, that's
Might as well take a break and take a break. How are you doing?
my job.
something like this, I think maybe we could have an open forum, but I don't know if we need to make it automatically for every meeting.
My only point is the agenda should state whether it is or not,
No,
so
I
that people know what to expect.
I absolutely agree. And there are times when it's discussion, for us. So,
Well, that becomes what, then in bottom line, that becomes a discussion between the chair and the staff as to whether or not.
I guess the question would be, do you want that to be the standard, or do you want to direct us every time it's based on the agenda, whether or not or it's warranted to have a public input?
Yeah.
So what? We can also just clear up the language, but, yeah.
I don't want the public to be confused.
No,
And I raised that, I had already raised that issue.
I second.
I mean, before
I understand.
yeah.
So Gretchen, are you okay as the chair of directing the staff, whether to include, on what
Yeah.
language to include?
Yeah.
Okay.
Have a motion? Just
It's a direction from the chair
Exactly.
to determine when appropriate for public comment.
So henceforth, when
And it's not just me, whoever is the chair.
Rami and I are putting together, the staff putting together this agenda moving forward, we'll ask for clarification when
Yeah.
I'm doing my roster.
Yeah.
If there's, in the public.
Yeah. Because a lot of the stuff we do is not really,
It is, their language, if it's
Yeah.
not, we'll share
Yeah.
the language.
yeah. Okay.
So let me ask this, then, if tonight's meeting was to approve this concept plan, and the concept plan was presented to the public, should not the public be allowed to comment at this meeting, or at a meeting for the planning commission to approve a plan?
The gray area there is the fact that this was the culmination of periods of open public comment. So it would be determined, you would want to just determine if there's like a last chance, but at that point, you've already been taking feedback from the public. That's chair's discretion.
I think the public had a considerable amount of opportunity, and their spouse was here. He was the only member of the public in attendance.
Agenda sure looked to me like no public. So why would they show up?
Anyway. Okay.
Okay. Moving on to the workshop.
Okay.
All right, so for some, what you have in front of you are sections of, so there's 4 different sections here, as well as Tiger's Urban Forestry Manual. So based upon what our conversations were back in July, when we had our workshop regarding trees, as well as, let me dial it back. So I have highlighted code amendments that are required by the state to be passed by the city council by the end of the year.
Okay.
So DLCD, the Department of Land Conservation Development, has an initiative, a statewide mandate for what is known as CFAC, climate-friendly and equitable communities. It's going to be kind of a scaffolding approach from the state, and it's up to individual cities to determine how intensive they want to do their code revisions. This was mandated, I believe, before my time, back in 2018, or maybe 2020. But what I know is that the city, given a lack of resources from the staff, requested from DLCD a 2-year exemption from the deadline, just because the previous staff planner was the contract planner and there were staff limitations. And so it has fallen to my shoulders to do the CFAC,
And we're now hitting the deadline.
CFAC amendment, and the deadline is December.
Okay.
They gave you, the LCD essentially sent out to the city a couple different options that you could do, but their baseline requirement was to remove minimum parking requirements for new development. So if you build an apartment complex, according to the state, you cannot dictate how many parking spaces that apartment complex can have. A house, a school, or anything, you cannot dictate minimum parking requirements. This provision was already included in the code amendments that were done for the special code, the special community development code that's out in Kingston Terrace. So I had to go in and change the old code for Proper King City because that has been amended to accommodate these requirements. So if we look at 16-132-010,
Can you, which sheet, are you talking of one that says parking reform summary? Is that the one you're talking on?
No, it's here on the actual
Oh,
code.
on the
yeah, I
actual
think.
code. Okay,
I don't have that parking report.
all right.
But if you look at the parking reform summary, I didn't set that out for you guys, but option 1 is the one that the city went with, just because I am with this, but I did try to do a good job. So 16-132, parking and loading is a chapter in the Old King City Code. And if we look at general provisions, I added this landscaping provision,
Mm-hmm.
which ties into next page in your stack, 16-124. And you can see the highlight for tree canopy. So these are tree canopy requirements now that the city has putting forth for anyone that builds a parking lot, has to accommodate this tree canopy. So 75% of listed tree canopy. Now, the reason that this is a workshop is because this is still a work in progress. We have 2 months to do it, but, the 11th hour, so we gotta kind of get it done. I essentially took this tree canopy provision from the Tiger Code. After our discussions in the last meeting, we all kind of agreed that Tiger has a pretty good set of code for this. And I pushed out the Tiger Urban Forestry Manual and King City. And so I printed out the Urban Forestry Manual for Tiger for you all to look through. But what I'm going to be doing is basically just finding the word Tiger and replacing it with the word King City.
I worked on that for 2 years.
So I have Chair Painter's blessing to do.
Yeah, really. I was on the Tiger Council when we did it.
Part of this moving forward is I'm going to talk to some planners over at Tiger, and I'm going to ask them maybe some insights as to what they have found work well within their manual and what don't. Their manual also is very, very in-depth, and for just right now, depending on what I find inside of it, and if there is a lot of conflict with other parts of our code, I might simplify it a little bit just to have the trees and some of the other stuff. Because we still want to have a bunch of code conflict in the manual, and then we have to do a bunch of revisions that we're not prepared for, because we do have this deadline. So, looking at just parking, we got 132, I added this landscaping provision. Now there's trees. The tree canopy section also has different standards for parking areas less than 20,000 square feet, which is a little less than half an acre, and more than 20,000 square feet, I'll give developers the option to, instead of tree covers, have those solar panel covers instead. So there's a little bit of flexibility there in that code. And so on page 2 of the 132 chapter, looks like I changed, I'm just going to go through them one by one, that's why I highlighted them. Page 3 has the electrical service capacity. So electrical service, that's defined by ORS 455-417. Essentially just makes it to where you have to have conduit. So if you build a home, then you have to have the ability to later on have someone who might buy that install their own electrical ports. And moving forward.
Do we have to have anything about solar panels?
In this specific, no.
or any buildings?
Not,
Okay,
not within the scope,
okay,
but that is something that I'm not sure if Kingston Terrace code has that in there.
we need to,
It's something that
we need to deal with that.
And this is kind of part one of a long-range, long-term, much broader code amendment, project that I'm undergoing, but it's gonna take me a lot of time.
Okay, so what we're talking about here is making the changes that need to be made to comply with the new state mandates.
Mhm.
Another opportunity for the state to take away local discretion.
And I have, sent these over to DLCD and spoken to their reps that are kind of spearheading the sort of tail end of the, feedback implementation, and they've given me some feedback that I kind of went in. So what you're seeing right now is based off of their feedback. So I've already ran it by the state, and then how it works is that, well, I was going to open up, so it's not as a post amendment, or post acknowledgement plan amendment, it's called a pop-up. Anytime you do a code amendment, so when we adopt RLWI, we do code amendments, comp plan amendments, you have to open a pop-up, and you have to tell the state that you're going to be doing code amendments, so they can review what you're doing. 35 days is the minimum notice that you can give for that pop-up. And I was originally going to open the pop-up for CPA, but after looking at the calendar, I realized 35 days from today is the day before Thanksgiving. And I didn't think that that would be a good day for a planning commission. So we're gonna push it back 2 weeks. And so that would then be another item on the agenda at that December 13th meeting, is this feedback. It would be that looking over this and recommending adoption.
And then the council would see it the next week.
The next week. We're kind of threading the needle here timing-wise,
Is there a reason we couldn't do it at our next meeting on the 13th?
because of the 35-day notice.
Oh,
Well, the 13th is the day that'll be done. You can't pass it, though, because you're the planning commission.
no, I meant the 13th of November.
Oh, yeah.
Could we do it then?
No, that's not 35 days out.
Oh, from when you sent it to the state? Ah, okay.
I wanted to bring it to you first before I send it to the state. And like I said, I was gonna do it today, but now not anyway.
And so what's the 2nd of December, the second Wednesday?
It would be it's the 13th when we will revisit the West Side Trail.
No, I meant if we're gonna have a meeting in December to deal with this.
Oh, you're right. Oh, it's
What?
the
11th?
11th.
Okay.
So plan on a meeting on the 13th of November for West Side Trail, and then the 11th of December.
This sounds to be almost pro forma. Because it's sort of what the state is telling us we have to do. Does that make sense to everyone else? So it probably would be a relatively short meeting.
If I do my job right. So anyway,
That's a lot of pressure now.
it's up to you. Do you want me to go through all of these? You can look over them yourself, but essentially what I did was I added provisions for landscaping. I changed.
Electrical service,
16-124 is the landscaping and community development code. 16-132 is the Old King City 130, parking and loading development code.
yeah.
And then 16-114 is the Kingston Terrace code that I just went back and matched the language in the Kingston Terrace code to match the development code for Kingston.
Okay, all right. So we actually did the parking, we've done the parking code, it's just basically sticking
We
it,
did the parking code for Kingston
Yeah.
Terrace.
yeah, so we've done the work.
For whatever reason, they sent a letter to the state requesting an exemption for 2 years. And someone happened to retire right before that 2 years. So I wonder how that worked out.
Wow.
Okay.
But, hey,
Okay, does that make sense for folks, that we'll plan on having a relatively brief meeting on the 11th of December
Okay.
to approve this?
So we're repealing the parking mandates and adding landscape. Okay.
landscape and some of that,
Yeah. Okay.
but everything that I changed is highlighted.
So
Oh, and then, sorry.
I'm going to suggest that you provide us with a summary memo of, we're changing, eliminating the parking that's in item X, number X, and we're adding landscaping to code number Y, and so that it's easy for us to go through this fairly quickly.
Yeah, okay, I can create a list with this section.
Yeah.
And the chapters and just what exactly.
I think don't you think that would be easy if we have a clean list of the items? That'll be easier to, yeah.
Well, yeah, there might be other items on December 11th. There's some preliminary discussions that we're having with developers, but I don't think anything will be ready to be planning commission. Depending on how the meeting in November goes with the West Side Trail, that might be another opportunity to add if there's still concerns. But I think that's the only thing that's right now.
I would prefer not to have a long meeting in December.
Yeah. I figured you guys didn't want to meet on the date first.
I would not be able to be there. I'm having surgery the week before.
You all got lots of stuff.
Yeah.
So does anyone else have any other questions for me? Do you all kind of approve of me stealing the Tigers?
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, the consensus in Metro is that it's the best one.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, I took some of the lists and I was trying to work on my own and I'm like, no, this is way too much work. Why reinvent the wheel from the already done?
Exactly. Yeah. Feeling is very appropriate.
I have the blessing of it.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's all I got for you. If anyone else has any questions, but I think.
Anybody have any more questions before we adjourn? Okay. With that, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.
Yeah. You do really hard work, and we really appreciate it.
Thanks for stealing
It's a little past 8, so, not too bad. Not too bad.
I was never late.
I apologize.
I actually been here